So welcome to Toronto. All right.
Great to be here.
Can you introduce yourself a little bit? So your name and then your background.
Well, I'm Steve James. I'm a filmmaker. Been making documentaries for a number of years, and I have a film here at the festival called Abacus, Small Enough to Jail.
Mm-hmm. So what triggers to make that documentary? It's a documentary, right?
Yes, yeah. It's a documentary. Well, I heard about this case that was going on where Abacus, which is a community bank in Chinatown, New York, that they were being tried for fraud, and they are the only bank in the U.S. in the wake of the 2008 financial mortgage crisis to actually be criminally indicted. And so that was fascinating in and of itself, but then as you look into it, you see that in so many ways the bank is kind of the mirror opposite of the big banks that were involved in all of that. Mm-hmm. You know, they're a very small bank. Their loans were fine. There was no foreclosures, hard to speak of. And they actually discovered some low-level fraud within the bank and reported it and tried to deal with it. But that wasn't enough for the DA of New York, and so they were taken to trial.
So you're trying to helping the small guy against the big guy?
Well, we're telling the story of a small guy against a big guy. They helped themselves. They mounted the defense of their bank, mm-hmm. and they refused to plead guilty and take a fine. They felt determined to exonerate themselves and go to trial, and they did. And it took 5 years for this to work out, and they spent very much of their own money towards their own defense.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, fraud in the commercial world is pretty common, right? So you mentioned that this looks like it's particularly picking a small bank as a kind of like to relieve about the 2008 financial fiasco. Right, so in your documentary, you are trying to give the audience an objective view, or supporting the small guy. So.
Well, I think it's clear when you watch the film that we believe in the Sung's innocence, and so this is a film where we are telling the story of what they went through from their point of view. Okay. However, despite that, we also made every effort and succeeded in getting the DA of New York, Cyrus Vance Jr., getting the woman who headed up the economic crimes unit to be interviewed, and we even spoke to a juror who was inclined to see them as guilty until, at a certain point. And so we make sure that some of those voices that were opposed to Abacus and are in there, and they get the opportunity to lay out their case against the bank.
Okay. Is it very difficult to get those people on camera and see?
It can be very hard. We persevered, and one of our co-producers, Nick Verbitsky, was particularly strong in terms of persistently pursuing those folks to be a part of our film, and succeeded. And we're so glad they're in the film. We're really glad they're in the film.
So they agreed and they're in the film. Yeah, that makes the film more credibility, right? So
I feel like it does, because even if the film's point of view is that we believe the Sungs to be innocent, it's our duty, I think, to fairly represent the case against them, and I feel like we did that.
Okay. Does this case involve like legal procedure, lots of legal documents, and that gives you guys, production crew, a very difficult task to finish that?
Well, I think it was a real challenge to lay out the case in the film, in part because there were no cameras allowed in the courtroom. That's true. So we had to find a way to dramatize and bring to life the testimony. So we did that through courtroom illustrations and recreating the transcript. But there were 7,000 pages of trial transcript that we had to wade through and figure out what was important to feature, and so it was a challenge.
Okay. To you, say, what kind of expectation from the audience when they see your documentary?
This documentary? What are the expectations?
Yeah. So
well,
what's the response from the audience?
Well, I mean, we've just premiered it last night, yesterday at here at TIFF. So that was a great response for the premiere, which was really heartening. Yeah. You know, I think we want the audience to look at this story that really is an important but untold story, and think about what it means against that larger backdrop and those questions of who gets justice in America, who is put on trial and who is not. But I think it's also a film that's a strong statement about a community in Chinatown and a bank that was central to that community, and their will and perseverance. I see.
So the Chinatown is a bank owned by a Chinese person, and then they feel passionate about the problem. I see that there's after the incident happened, they got lots of people going to the bank to get the money, and there's lots of chaos right there, right?
Yeah, well, that's what happened in 2003 when they had a problem. Yeah. And it was only because Mr. Sung was able to go out and speak to the people in the streets and comfort them and explain to them that everything was going to be fine, that that was averted. The run on the bank was ultimately averted. I know that they worried that the same thing might happen with this trial once the indictment happened, and they were prepared to deal with it, but it didn't happen. And I think that was kind of a statement about the fact that the community was still strongly in their corner, in the bank's corner, that it didn't cause an immediate run on the bank.
So that means that Mr. Sung, the owner, has enough credibility in the people.
He has tremendous credibility, yeah, in Chinatown. We saw that every time we walked around Chinatown with him. You know, he's a much beloved person there because he has been such an active part of that community for decades, and through his bank and his volunteer work, that he's really earned a special place in the community.
I see. So from the beginning, like thinking about to make this documentary until finished, how long did it take?
The film took over a year to make. I would say it took closer to a year and a half to make.
Okay. So through this process, do you get any inspiration yourself through this case?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I found the family to be very inspiring. I thought their will and their determination and their love for each other. You know, they're very, yes, you see them arguing over things, and at times in the film, a strategy or how to write a document. You see that, and that's true to who they are. But you also see that they're an incredibly close-knit family, and I think,
there, right? So.
Yeah, and that's one of the real joys of making the film.
Okay, and then you make good friends too, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.